Okay. Okay. So, sir, you read. I don't need to introduce.
All right. Since Vinod decides to save up his knockout punch for the end, I will... Okay, I'm going to read you a few passages from Nair Saab's book. This is a chapter called Film Preservation in India, and it is a chapter I personally found extremely moving, in which Nair Saab talks about the travails of trying to track down forgotten movies, trying to trace film producers whom no one has heard of, no one hears about anymore, and the job of restoring these movies. It's widely known that the first Indian story film, Raja Harishchandra, was made in 1913 by Dada Saheb Phalke. What is not widely known is that the film perished a few years after it was made. The only surviving print of the film caught fire while it was being transported in a bullock cart from one tent cinema to the other. The actual cause of the accident was not known, but it was reported that the nitrate print had already had a large number of screenings and was practically worn out, and that the accident may have happened while loading or unloading. In 1917, when Phalke found out that the original negatives had also vanished, he reshot the film, duplicating the original shot by shot, taking the opportunity to insert title cards, asserting his claim to be the father of the Indian film industry. Like Phalke's films, many of the most important films in our history have not survived. Many have either turned to powder or have been lost in fires through accidents or negligence. Many others were lost when silver was extracted from the nitrate films, or when cellulose film was stripped and used to prepare bangles, ladies' handbags, and other curios. To think that Alam Aram must be being worn around some lady's bangle today. Cottage industries that thrived parasitically off the filmmaking scene. According to informed sources, nearly 70% of the titles produced before 1950 have either deteriorated beyond repair or may be considered permanently lost. There are many reasons why we are in such a situation today. Barring a few pioneering exceptions, most of the early films were made by businessmen whose primary concern was making profits. Their interest in a film lasted only as long as it earned them money. Thereafter, they did not care about the whereabouts of the negatives or positive prints. Even if they did care, few had the facilities or the technical know-how to take care of highly inflammable nitrate films. As a result, many film negatives were simply allowed to perish. Filmmakers and authorities alike were not conscious of the historical or cultural importance of cinema. Film is highly fragile material which needs special care and attention for a longer life. However, under the British colonial regime, there were no organizations entrusted with the responsibility of treating cinema as a cultural product and ensuring its preservation for posterity. In the national consciousness, cinema always had a low level of priority. The taboos attached to the profession ensured that few people considered wasting their time in preserving films. A lack of awareness and understanding thus led to the wanton destruction of the country's film heritage. One such film happened to be Alam Ara, the first Indian talkie which is still not traceable. When we contacted him 2 years before his death, Ardeshir M. Irani, the maker of the film, and the man who brought sound to Indian cinema, told us that he had kept some reels of the film in his office room at Imperial Studio, now Jyoti Studio. But his son Shapurji took us aside and confided, "The old man still thinks the reels are lying around in his office, but I know for certain they have been disposed of as junk. I myself did it as they were creating a fire hazard." What a pity. The man had no idea that he had allowed one of the most important historical records of Indian cinema to be destroyed. As a footnote, I want to mention that when I was in Nasik recently, this is in 2012, for the shooting of Celluloid Man, I discovered that the Phalke house no longer existed. A commercial complex had come up in its place. Searching for the prints of other silent films made in India was an even more Herculean task. it was a great adventure to visit the remote corners of the country to hunt for films. They were quite literally scattered around, turning up in such odd places as cowsheds and godowns belonging to owners of grocery shops. A few reels of Indian silent films were also found in foreign locations. Somehow, we managed to locate about 10 of the 1,500 silent feature films made in this country between 1913 and 1932. Most of Phalke's family members and heirs we met in our search were happy to collaborate with us. Often they helped us collect films and supplied information we needed. Yet there were bitter encounters as well. Sometimes doors were shut in our faces and we were told to get lost. Don't even utter the word film in this house. Our father lost all the family property in making films and we have yet to recover from the loss. Then there was the time a grocery shop owner told us, yes, I have a wooden box containing some old films lying in my attic. By the way, how much can you pay? We asked to look at the box, but he would not show it, despite repeated requests. First, tell me how much you are offering, then I'll show you. I told him I needed to have a look at the material to find out whether the reels were intact or had deteriorated and turned to powder. When he refused to relent, his son took me aside to a corner and confided, it's difficult to argue with the old man, wait for some time. I'll see to it that the box comes to the film archive. A couple of years later, after the death of the old man, the box was deposited at the archive. Unfortunately, by that time, most of the reels had been damaged and we could salvage only a couple of films, Muraliwala and Sati Savitri, both produced in 1927 by the Maharashtra Film Company, directed by Babu Rao Painter. Then there is another chapter which I consider very significant, which is called The Neglected Projectionist. And this illustrates Nair Saab's attitude to cinema and explains his lifelong obsession, passion, unending romance with the medium. Going to the cinema is entertainment for many, but for me it was different. Of course, the entertainment element was there to a limited extent, but it was just incidental. After the initial thrill of the flickering images and accompanying sounds, I settled down to something serious. It may seem rather strange, but cinema going to me was more of an obsession, like going to the temple. And watching films on the big screen in a darkened hall was a spiritual experience. It hardly mattered whether the film was a mythological, historical, social, comedy, or thriller. Being a dedicated archivist, I hold the view that every film, good, bad, or indifferent, even Vinod Chopra's films, has its place in cinema history. As for value judgments, I would rather leave them to posterity. Puritans and critics of cinema may not appreciate my stand. Associating cinema halls with places of worship may sound outrageous to some, but I feel differently. This may be why I took the decision to ask viewers entering the National Film Archive in Pune to leave their shoes and chappals outside. Naturally, one expects the same kind of reverence from one's fellow viewers. Pioneer showman J.F. Madan set the ball rolling by setting up the first chain of movie theaters in this country. By the mid-1920s, his company, Madan Theatres, owned about 170 cinemas all over the country and accounted for nearly half the national box office collections. He named his cinemas movie palaces. Palaces are normally the abodes of royalty, the exclusive domain of the privileged few, the lucky ones. But movie palaces are meant for the common man, to take time off from the drudgeries of daily life and escape into a world of fantasy, glamour, and make-believe. Naturally, the menu on the screen has to be in tune with the atmosphere where it is served. So what is being shown and where it is shown complement each other. This historical tradition is a strong point in show business. The illuminated hoardings and banners in front of the theater, the huge entrance, the rows of marble steps, the sliding glass doors, the red-carpeted winding staircases leading to the spacious and chandeliered foyer, the air-conditioned auditorium with rows of pushback cushioned seats, every seat a cool retreat, as the management would proudly claim. The decorative murals on the acoustically treated walls, the outsized wall-to-wall CinemaScope screen protected by an eye-catching velvet curtain, and last but not least, the spotlessly clean and scented toilets. He obviously didn't visit Gaiety in Galaxy. These are the hallmarks of the traditional movie palace. However, barring a few exceptions, a majority of these theatres pay scant attention to the most vital aspect, namely the quality of projection in terms of image and sound reproduction, and the size of the projected image vis-a-vis the auditorium. This, of course, is now outdated, but it's important to read what he wrote at that time, because I myself have experienced this, watching movies in theatres which were shot in widescreen and projected in the normal format, and at times you could actually see the microphone dangling on top. I even saw the tracks in one film, and of course the lights were visible in many. Since the introduction of CinemaScope, every film is projected in widescreen format, irrespective of the original aspect ratio of the picture, with the result that the audience only sees half the frame, with the top and bottom mercilessly slashed, distorting the original composition the cameraman and director have so painstakingly tried to create. And if you have watched a subtitled print at a film festival or a film society screening, you must have noticed the heads of characters being chopped just to enable you to read the subtitles.